You're watching This Week in Space with Miles O'Brien.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Space. I'm Miles O'Brien. For NASA, there's an awful lot up in the air and above it this week. Agency workers may be shell-shocked and confused over what is next for the space agency, but that didn't stop them from successfully lighting the candle on the space shuttle Endeavour. With the shuttle program winding down, every launch these days represents a last, and this was the last scheduled night launch. Of course, a few slips could change that down the road. The Endeavour 6, led by Marine Colonel George Zamka, charged uphill and put the International Space Station in their sights. The space station now looks like, well, a space station, prompting veteran astronaut Steve Robinson to wax eloquent in an in-flight interview with some local TV stations.
This wonderful legacy of the shuttle program is this unbelievable space station. When we approached it yesterday from below, to look up and see what humankind could really accomplish in space was just almost impossible to believe. It seemed like science fiction, and now here we are with human beings that are living on board, and that truly is the amazing legacy of the space shuttle program.
Things are anything but tranquil and clear among the NASA rank and file this week as they try to digest the news that the space program is taking the most dramatic turn since JFK challenged it to go to the moon. The space world knew there were big changes coming, but when the Obama administration announced the complete cancellation of Constellation, say that 6 times fast, it caught many by surprise, including NASA brass, who got the word only a few days before. But NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden took the heat and accepted blame when he finally met with reporters at the Cape right before the shuttle launch.
Why wasn't the NASA workforce better prepared for this? As I told everybody yesterday, you're looking at the guy who's responsible. I will take the heat. The reason Congress is angry with us, the reason that the NASA workforce was not better prepared, was because I didn't listen to people like Maury who talked about how we should roll this thing out. I thought I knew better, to be quite honest. And so we rolled out the budget. We rolled out everything in the manner that we did. And was it screwed up? Yes, it was. So I learned a valuable lesson. I learned that the reason I have somebody like this who knows the media, the reason I have somebody like Seth Statler who knows the Hill, is to advise me, and I didn't listen. So I learned a very hard lesson, as Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords has reminded me, and Chairman Gordon have reminded me. You know, you don't know everything, so listen to your people. So that's why the workforce was not better prepared, because I didn't listen to people.
The rollout was confused, but so is the message. We do know this. The Obama White House would like NASA to get out of the low Earth orbit taxi business and instead get the private sector, get some skin in the game, and build what amounts to private space liners that NASA and those who have the cash can fly to space. Now, Arthur C. Clarke would be proud. But beyond low Earth orbit, things get a little murky and vague. NASA will spend money on cool new technologies that might one day get us farther into the solar system a lot faster, but there's no destination or date. Later in the week, Charlie Bolden told the Houston Chronicle his personal vision is a piloted mission to Mars. You have to wonder if the White House is on board with that. Meanwhile, the big contractors who are a part of Constellation are scheduling therapy for post-traumatic stress. At Lockheed Martin, they were hoping their piece of the program, the Orion capsule, would survive. No such luck. The man in charge there, John Karras, joined me at the Cape during the shuttle countdown. Were you a little bit surprised that Orion didn't dodge the bullet?
Yeah, we were surprised, especially in light of the way the new vision was rolled out, that we wanted to be leaders in space. And so I think, you know, what's funny is that if you want to go, you know, outside of low Earth orbit, you need a capsule to do that for deep space. Not a capsule, but an integrated system to do that for deep space. And so commercial to me means, you know, the way it's defined is low Earth orbit, getting from where you are to here, and the Russians have it, and the Chinese have it, and the Japanese want to have it. And so it's kind of like, if you want to maintain space leadership, it was kind of a paradox, an oxymoron to me. But hey, you know, the way I look at it, it was proposed cut, right? We have at least one leg of the 3 branches, if not a couple, to get involved, and so we'll see what happens. But anyway.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we've got you know, Leroy was part of the Augustine Commission, which took a hard look at what was ahead. And a couple things that were quite evident through all of this is that since the vision for space exploration was announced, the amount of funding for Constellation, for Ares 1, Ares 5, for Orion, is perpetually underfunded. So in a sense, we painted ourselves into a situation where we had an untenable program. It made it easier to kill it, didn't it?
I think it did. You know, it's kind of like if they only pay you $1 a year, things are going to slip out. That's what happens. And so with us, we were still able to maintain a lot of technology and innovation, which is another thing that was perplexing. We have our launch abort system that's going to be tested in about 60 days. It has state-of-the-art attitude control system we've never done before, innovation. You know, we have our capsule coming out of Michoud right now with state-of-the-art materials that are lighter than composites. If you look at the policy and you want to be relying on commercial, and I'll say a commercial market, then you have to look at that really hard.
How do you define that, though? Because there's always been a commercial entity, a commercial player. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, to me, I mean, you've got commercial companies, right? We're a commercial company. There's private companies, but there's, in the commercial entity, there's companies, and companies build products, right? So I think what we're confusing a little bit is the commercial or the product possibility versus the market opportunity. And if there's not a lot of opportunity, then in order to say, well, I don't want to be stovepiped and I want to have 2 providers, if there's no commercial market, what happens is, and I'm a poster child for this, spending lots of money from the company and lots of taxpayer money and not having a product that sells commercially.
Right.
So I think you have to be really careful. And so if that doesn't materialize, it is an abyss.
Right.
And so if you're going to stake your policy on that, then somebody should have an independent review to make sure that the market exists. And I think the last one independent study done was 6 or 7 years ago, and that market was not all that big. So if you want an underpinning that's all about commercial markets to stimulate commercial products, then you should analyze that before you move out. And I also think, as you know, being a rocket scientist and a taxpayer, it's kind of the rule of wing walking, right? We've been holding on to the shuttle for a long time, right? And Orion was sitting there getting pretty close, maturing, and then this is like jumping off the airplane and waiting for somebody to build an airplane and come and get you, okay? Right?
Right.
You know? And so there's got to be some mutual backup just in case. We spent a lot of money on the station, and I think commercially we can do it. I mean, Lockheed Martin and myself have built a lot of commercial products and rockets, and there's a pad right over there that we did commercially, and commercially in the sense of a contract. So there's commercial companies, there's commercial contracts, and there's commercial markets, and we always kind of blend that together. And so we'll see, but you know, I think that we were farther along than people thought. We have more innovation, obviously, than Charlie's given us credit for. You know, we think we can be very safe. And we can fly earlier if you want.
In addition to being the head honcho on Orion, Karras is also the big boss in charge of the Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, where Lockheed Martin makes the big orange external fuel tanks for the space shuttles. He says in the event NASA decides to extend the shuttle program, tank production would be the tall pole in the tent, as they say. They have enough parts to put together somewhere around 2 to 4 additional tanks. After that, they'd have to restart production from scratch, and it takes years to build a tank. Even so, it's an idea that is championed by some in the shuttle program. Coming up, we'll check in with a key player in the Space Transportation System program who has a plan for extending the shuttle mission and keeping Americans in space on American vehicles. But is it too late and too expensive to unwind the unwinding of the shuttle era? Howard DeCastro of the United Space Alliance after a break. Welcome back to This Week in Space. The space station was a busy place this week as Endeavour pulled into the driveway for a visit. There are a dozen spacefarers in all up there working on getting Tranquility bolted in and online. And speaking of online, now that the station is connected to the interweb, you can log on and peek over their shoulder up there. The new station webcam can be found if you go to nasa.gov/station. Matter of fact, why don't we see what's going on up there right now? Oh, I guess that's the wrong channel. But a catchy tune. Well, let me change it to the ISS TV. Oh, boy, I didn't know they had that many people on the station. They must have turned on the gravity generator or something. Once the shuttles are in the museums, NASA's only ticket to ride to the space station will be on Russian-built Soyuz rockets. NASA has already bought 6 seats at about $50 million a pop, no frequent flyer discounts. But now it appears the head of the Russian space agency, Roscosmos, is spoiling to drive a hard bargain for any tickets beyond those flights. He told the Interfax news agency, "Excuse me, but the price should be absolutely different then." Seems like they are better at turning space into a business than the U.S. Oh, the irony there. All of this is more fodder for a persistent group of people who say it is not too late to save the shuttle, or at least fly it a little longer than 4 more missions. One of them is one of the top people at the prime shuttle contractor, the United Space Alliance. Howard DeCastro spoke with me at the Cape before we watched Endeavour take flight for her 24th voyage.
The vehicles are in the best shape they've ever been in.
There's some irony.
Yes, that is ironic at the close of the program, but we've been flying well. We had a tremendous effort after Columbia to make sure we fully understood the condition of the vehicles. The whole team has opened up better than ever before, works very, very, very well together. And the last mission was, I think by any measure, the smoothest, least number of in-flight anomalies.
It is a bit of a shame to say that. Here we are with 5 launches left and know we're finally figured this whole thing out.
Yes, it is a shame. I'm an advocate for flying the shuttle longer to close the gap, to maintain our lead in human space flight. I think the United States needs to do that. There are many voices in that arena. Unfortunately, that's not the direction we seem to be going.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. You know, the conventional wisdom is that decisions have already been made vis-a-vis the supply chain on the space shuttle that would make it next to impossible to continue flying it beyond the 5 flights we have left. Is that not true?
Actually, it's not true. A lot of the folks who have said we can't fly the shuttle longer aren't dealing completely in facts. We test the water with all the other contractors. Lockheed Martin's one of the long poles because they've got to build new tanks.
Right.
And they have disassembled some of the equipment necessary to build tanks, but that equipment still exists at Michoud and could be put back into service very easily. The space is there. The material is there for about 4 or 5 additional tanks. And then there would be time, as you built those, to build more tanks if you wanted to fly the shuttle a couple times a year until the United States had another human spaceflight capability.
All right, so this idea is possible. Are there any other big issues that you would have to do? Yeah, I mean, as far as the space shuttle main engines, that kind of thing, that would be required to get the space shuttle back up there?
There's no showstopper whatsoever. You'd have to bring some suppliers back online, but they're ready to go. People will come. This is, if you want to fly shuttles longer, the folks are there to support it.
All right. NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden said a couple of things over the past few days that basically the shuttle system is inherently unsafe. This is from somebody who's flown on it 4 times, and then something to the effect, it's like he was talking to workers, it's like putting a gun to your head, Russian roulette style, every time you launch. What do you say to that?
Well, that's an unfortunate choice of words, especially the Russian roulette choice. The job, this is a tremendous team of people that works together, led by Bill Gerstenmaier up in headquarters and John Shannon down at the Johnson Space Center, John's deputies. There are in the neighborhood of 20,000 people engaged in working on the shuttle at any given time. And if you want to use the loaded pistol analogy, what I would say is the way we approach business and work together to test, to evaluate, to check out the vehicle, to make sure that it's ready to go. Our job is to make sure the gun isn't loaded. We aren't going to fly a vehicle that is unsafe. Now, safe flight has a risk. When you accelerate that much mass to 17,000 miles an hour, there is certainly some risk associated with it. But this team puts its heart and soul into making sure that those vehicles and the astronauts are as safe as they can be. And this team has never worked better than it works together right now. I would like to see the United States, first of all, I'd like to see us maintain our lead in human space flight. But if we're willing to give it up, as we seem to be, I hope we work very, very hard and very, very quickly to regain it and to do great things with this NASA team.
You think we're giving it up?
Absolutely. I think we're handing it over to the other countries that right now, Russia will maintain its capability on Soyuz. China and India are working hard to have a capability. We have the Europeans that are launching logistics to space. Yes, we're giving it up. We will have a dip in the knowledge base and the experience base, and we'll have to rebuild that when NASA gets back on a program that takes us back to a leadership position in human spaceflight.
If you were running the show, what would you do?
I would continue to fly the shuttle until I had a United States vehicle that was capable of supporting the International Space Station, whether it's a commercial venture, which is fine. If commercial can meet its goals, that would be just fine. But whether it's commercial or a NASA, we should not stop our program, our American program, until we have a replacement program. That's what I would do.
Howard DeCastro, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for
Miles.
dropping by. Sounds like a good plan to me.
Always a pleasure.
Just save me a seat, will you, on one of those flights? All right.
That'd be great.
Thanks for dropping by. Coming up on the program, ever wonder what springtime is like on Pluto? Or whether there is a spring on the dwarf planet? Hubble weighs in with some images that suggest there are seasons there. And Hubble also grabs a picture of the aftermath of an extraordinary collision. Somebody get the number of that rock.
3, 2, 1, 0, and ignition and liftoff.
NASA's sun-seeking Solar Dynamics Observatory is safely on its way to a geosynchronous orbit of about 22,000 miles in altitude to do what Sheryl Crow would do, soak up the sun while it's still free before it goes out of me. The goal for SDO is to take high-resolution images of the sun and measure its magnetic field activity. The hope? It will one day make it possible to predict solar storms that can affect spacecraft, astronauts, and can wreak havoc with our BlackBerries and cell phones here on Earth. You might want to put March 8th in your BlackBerry calendar, because that is the day SpaceX has reserved the range at Cape Canaveral to launch its Falcon 9 rocket for the first time. The company, founded by internet millionaire Elon Musk, now reports all the hardware is at the Cape. All they need to do is bolt it all together, stack it up, and light the fuse. Easy peasy, right? Well, not really. The first launch, whenever it finally goes, will test the rocket by lofting a mock Dragon spacecraft. The real thing is designed to haul cargo to the space station under contract to NASA. Musk says he has built it to be human being ready from the outset. Astronomers may have downgraded Pluto to dwarf planet status, not that there's anything wrong with that, but this denizen of the distant fringe of our solar system never stops triggering our imaginations. Check out these images from the Hubble Space Telescope, 384 of them in all, shot between 2002 and 2003. Lead investigator Mark Bowie of the Southwest Research Institute in Boulder, Colorado, calls it his best guess at a true color appearance of the dwarf planet. The images also show evidence of ice melting and refreezing as the seasons change. It takes Pluto 248 Earth years to make its way around the sun. And you think this winter has been long and cold? And from our What Are the Odds desk, check out this Hubble image. Astronomers first thought it was a comet, but now believe it shows the immediate aftermath of a head-on collision of two asteroids traveling 5 times faster than a rifle bullet. Astronomers believe collisions like this are relatively common in the asteroid belt, but they have never gotten to see one before. And more from the Cool Images desk. This one comes from Mars, the Southern Highlands, where the European Space Agency's Mars Express captured these images of some craters, some relatively young, some old. And there's this one of the Orion Nebula, captured by the European Southern Observatory, specifically its new instrument called VISTA, the Visible and Infrared Survey Telescope for Astronomy. It is the largest survey telescope in the world, and this image is likely the first of many that will make you say, ooh. The news that NASA is heading off in a dramatic new direction has many people saying ooh, or whoa, or in some cases, ouch. The Coalition for Space Exploration, which consists of all the big traditional space contractors, thinks it's a big mistake to throw out Constellation, Lock, Stock, and Booster. One of the coalition board members was there on the inside when Constellation was dreamed up. Former astronaut Fred Gregory was deputy NASA administrator when the Bush administration announced the so-called Vision for Space Exploration in 2004. I spoke with him before the shuttle launch. Fred Gregory, always a pleasure to have you with us on the program. Let's talk about the big news of the week, the cancellation of Constellation, NASA charting a whole new course, focus on commercial rides to space, to low Earth orbit for U.S. astronauts. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's talk about Constellation and the decision to cancel it outright. Do you think that's a good decision?
Well, I don't think it's a good decision. I think that it is a recommendation, obviously, by the president. And I would assume that there will be a thorough evaluation of that recommendation by the Congress. From my point of view, from my personal point of view, programs such as the Constellation program that give and identify something in the future, something that we're aim for, some goal, would be similar to airplanes when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I'd look in the sky, see airplanes, and that's the thing that encouraged me to study science and technology and math and engineering. Without something like that in the future, I think young students, young teachers would not have something to look forward to, and they would not choose those things which I think are core capabilities of America.
Well, a couple things come to mind. First of all, the money that would be spent on Constellation, according to the Obama plan, would be funneled into novel propulsion ideas like plasma rockets, that sort of thing. That obviously could engage in people's imagination. What it lacks, though, of course, is a destination and a date certain. Do you think that's important to have that?
Well, I think it's always good to have a shoot-to target, something that you're looking forward to. I know Franklin is working on his plasma propulsion system. It's an excellent enabler, but what we need is, and the so what? Why are we doing it? What will it help us accomplish? And I would hope that after the scrutiny and review in Congress, that perhaps Charlie Bolden will have some set of some guidance on which way we're going to head.
So you think Congress is going to weigh in here, and this decision will somehow come to a compromise of some sorts?
Well, I would hope that the Congress looks at what the president has recommended and takes that and works with it to determine some destinations. At the same time, as you mentioned a little earlier, and I know we're going to get to that a little later, the commercial side of this. I think that the commercial side, when it is done in support of government programs, yields probably a better product. And I think at this point it might be a little premature to put everything over on the commercial side and say, do great things. It could lead to a much longer time before the United States has a capability to launch humans again to space.
I want to pick up on that point, but I have one more thought on Constellation I wanted to run by you. Constellation, as it was announced and planned out, and more importantly, as it was funded, really was not going to get NASA very far. It was perpetually underfunded and behind schedule. So when we say we're going to the moon, we were only in a notional sense, correct?
Yes, that's correct. But I think when President Bush announced the program in 2004, the assumption was that there would be adequate funding. And I think even from the beginning, either in the Bush administration and within the Obama administration right now, I think that the intent was there. I think the good feelings and spirit was there, but the shortage of funding would not allow the program to ever be successful.
Well, you were there. You were the deputy administration when the vision was announced. You were there with Sean O'Keefe, and it has to be a disappointment to you to see it come to this.
Well, it certainly does, but I look at it more from the point of view that I've got a couple of grandkids out at the Air Force Academy at this point, and they've called and asked, we are studying to be or to do things similar to you, but we don't see anything on the horizon now. What is it? Where should we go? We give us some help. You give us some direction. And I think that's the dilemma now that young kids will be faced with.
The battle over the cancellation of Constellation now moves to Capitol Hill, where a handful of legislators, mostly from states like Florida, Alabama, and Texas, with deep stakes in the moon program, have vowed to fight for it. And you can bet they're not going to go away quietly. Well, that's it for This Week in Space. Thanks for watching. We have been hearing from you, and we like to. This review on iTunes caught our eye this week. It comes from Revenue Manny. This short video podcast is excellent. The interviews with past present astronauts are interesting and informative. I can only wait in suspense until the next episode. Well, speaking of the next episode, whether there will be one is in doubt, frankly. It is about revenue, Manny. We have done 6 editions of This Week in Space, and now is the time for us to figure out how to pay the rent. We're looking for advertisers. If you have any suggestions on that, let us know. In the meantime, you, the viewers, can help us. If you would like to help keep us on, go to our site, spaceflightnow.com/twist, click on the PayPal button. It's not tax deductible, but if you like our show and you want us to stay around, please consider making a contribution. Please send us your laurels, darts, and dollars to twist@spaceflightnow.com or tweet us at This Week in Space, or leave a comment on our blog, milesobrien.com. Next time, a story we promised you for last week, but a little bit of news got in the way. The return of the Zeppelin to the skies over NASA Ames. So, should I do the helium gag one more time? Oh, why not?
I'm Miles O'Brien, and I would be pleased as punch if you joined us next time on This Week in Space.